And I know you've done a lot of Star Trek. Can you break down to me how you got started in Star Trek? I know we talked about it previously, but I would love to jump back in.
Sure, sure. Well, I've written something like 35 Star Trek comics and 120 Star Trek. I'm sorry, 80 80 Star Trek books,
Wow.
125 or so Star Trek comics. I collaborated on an episode of Star Trek Voyager, and I've done audio books and things like that. So yeah, I'm steeped in Star Trek. I think it started. I was like, I don't know, like maybe 10 years old, something like that, and the first episode of Star Trek came on, and I was bowled over. I was, there's an expression that you see in The Great Gatsby, an object commensurate with his capacity for wonder. This was the most I could wonder, and there it was on the screen, unbelievably enough. Nothing like anything I had seen on television. So I was bowled over, and I was a devotee immediately. Every week I was there plastered in front of the screen waiting for the episode of Star Trek. It was a compulsion. The thing that was a little different for me as compared with other Star Trek fans is after I watched an episode, I never watched it again. I felt like, okay,
I got it.
Got that one. Show me something new. So, in college, I had friends who were also into Star Trek, but they were watching the reruns and syndication all the time, and I was like, yeah, I've seen that. I want to see something else. But as Star Trek, entered the movie era, and as Next Generation started, I was really glued to the tube.
What were some of your favorite episodes of Star Trek when you were were growing through? Like, what was some that really kind of stood out to you?
One was Where No Man Has Gone Before. The pilot that was not used initially, the one that was turned into a two-parter with Gary Mitchell. That was one of my favorites, and I guess for a couple of reasons. Looking back, it was sort of a superhero story, about how this guy becomes a supervillain, and it was also about friendship. It was about this friendship between Kirk and Gary Mitchell, and how Kirk is kind of torn between his duty and his friend, and that's very compelling.
Of course. That inner conflict is like, I want to be there and I want to help this guy, but I don't really have a choice and I don't know what to do. How do I help my friend, and how do I do the right thing?
Exactly. So that really, that was very memorable. The Mirror Universe episode also, because seeing Spock and Sulu as evil versions of themselves, or at least amoral versions of themselves. That was also really cool. So some of those in the original series really stuck with me. And I had done 4 books for Warner. Warner had an imprint called Questar, and I sold them my first book. It was called The Hammer and the Horn, which I've since re-released on my own, and that was the first in a trilogy. And when I sold that first book, I remember I had a job in Manhattan, and I went home that day after I was told that I had sold that, feeling bigger than the skyscrapers.
Sure.
I owned this world.
Yeah.
I had sold a book to a publisher.
Yeah.
It was the best feeling. And then so I sold 2 other books in the trilogy, and then a freestanding book. And my agent at the time, she was in contact with Dave Stern, who was editing the Star Trek publishing program, which was only 6 books a year at the time, and they were looking for new and perhaps more professional writers. And Dave liked my books, and he said, "Yeah, I'd like to see this guy Mike, try his hand at Star Trek." And I was like, "Star Trek, really? How cool is that?" Because I'd read a couple of Star Trek books, and they, I said, wow, put words in the mouths of Spock and Kirk. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So I did that. I wrote up a proposal for Dave, and I called him. I said, "So what do you think?" And he said, "Mike," he goes, "This is exactly what we're not looking for. This is nothing like what I want." I said, "But you liked my?" He goes, "Yeah, yeah. Your books were fantasy. They were based on Norse mythology, but that's not what I want. I want that style, but I want science fiction." So I said, "Okay." And I took another week or so, and I came up with a story that was a distinctly Star Trek story, and it sprang off the episode "What Are Little Girls Made Of," where android duplicates are made of an android duplicate is made of Kirk, and the plan is to make other androids, and so I sprang off of that, and I sent Dave another proposal, and Dave said, he read it and he goes, "Mike, this is great." He goes, "But it doesn't have an ending." And I said, "Yeah, you want to hear the ending?" I said, "That's
Spoiling
that's
it
a
for you.
surprise,
Yeah.
right?" He goes, "Mike," he goes, "I'm the editor.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm a professional." So I wrote him the ending, which involved the Romulans, and he was happy, and that became my first Star Trek book, Double Double. And then it kind of went on from there. Next Generation came out, and I wanted to do a Next Generation novel. And that worked out. And then I didn't plan on writing 35 Star Trek books, but that, every time I finished one, I had the urge to do another one.
Yeah.
So over the years, I did that many.
I think it comes to character, and if you're great at something, I think they wanted you to keep coming back for a reason.
I guess. And from my point of view, there was always some little dark corner that I wanted to shine a light on. That's the most fun, shining a light on a dark corner that nobody else has shone a light on.